What we're going to do today is we're going to pick up from where we left off with yesterday. Now we're in the war. It came to us whether we wanted it or not. So we're in a weird situation here. Now it's us and the Brits against the Axis powers. Where's Russia during all this? They're in Poland, you're right. What's the deal they have with Adolf Hitler? Non-aggression pact. I promise. I won't invade you if you don't invade me. What we're going to talk about today is going to be what Hitler does to break his promise. Now, we've talked about this over and over again. If a fascist dictator gives you a promise, don't believe it. He's simply buying time when he signs this deal with Stalin. He knows eventually it's going to happen because Hitler writes about it in Mein Kampf. He says, eventually, one day, we are going to take Western Russia. This right here is the breadbasket of Europe. This land is what's going to feed the Third Reich. It's just a matter of time. By 1941, Hitler believes he's ready for his invasion. Now, I want to just tell you this, because when you look at the invasion of Russia, it's hard to conceptualize. It's hard to wrap your mind around how big, how big it is. So I'm going to give you some examples here in a moment to try to put this in a comparison. We talked before about how during the Battle of Britain, Hitler's getting so frustrated with the Luftwaffe. He knows that if he's going to succeed and knock out the Brits, he has to have total aerial superiority. You control the skies, you control the battlefield. He's simply so frustrated with them because the Luftwaffe can't knock out the RAF. They can't send the tanks across the English Channel until they have aerial superiority. It drags out for weeks and then months. And Hitler finally says, I don't even need Great Britain. It's not part of the plan anyway. They're just a nuisance. I'll worry about them later. He turns his back on the Brits and starts to move east. Now, I do want to point something out here. What has he done to himself by leaving the Brits at his back? Starting a two-front war. Big mistake. But Hitler believes in the Blitzkrieg. I'm not surprised. He has a winning formula. And when he looks at Western Russia, he says, this is what Blitzkrieg is designed for. Speed, agility, let them run. Western Russia is these expansive, flat, open plains that's all but perfect for this next generation of tanks to open up. These tanks can go 50 miles an hour. Let them run. So Hitler breaks his deal with Stalin. He stabs him in the back. And he launches the biggest invasion in the history of the world with Operation Barbarossa. Now, like I said, it's hard to conceptualize. So let me just say this. What's going on in the East, just this theater, is the biggest war in the history of mankind. It's about 4 times bigger than all of World War I. Not to mention what's going on in the Pacific, and not to mention what's going on in the West. Just the Eastern Front is just titanic in numbers. The battle line is 1,000 miles long. It's the equivalent of if the United States got invaded in a line from Miami to Boston. That's the size we're dealing with. The scale of this is just hard to wrap your mind around because it's simply so huge. When he invades the Soviet Union, he unleashes the Blitzkrieg. Now, do you remember, what's phase 1 of the Blitz? Okay, send the Luftwaffe first. Sends them into Russia. Hits those targets we talked about. Hits the railroads, hits the radio towers. They hit military installations. And here you have the Russians, and this is just kind of bizarre because they start communicating saying, we're being invaded. Who's invading us? It could be the Germans. We have a deal with them. There's all this confusion, and I guess I don't understand why. Who do they think it is? It's here comes the blitzkrieg. They watched this happen. And then once the airplanes have done their job, then what do you send? What's phase 2? Now you send the tanks. Here come these Panther tanks screaming across the Soviet Union with these big, massive movements. And you have these Russian commanders saying, the Germans are invading. Someone tell Stalin. They finally get to Stalin. He says, no, Hitler wouldn't do that to me. It's so weird. Stalin doesn't trust anyone, but somehow he trusts Adolf Hitler. When it finally becomes apparent that it's Hitler that's doing this, Stalin takes the news very hard. He goes into his room, he locks the door, and he cries for a week. He can't believe that Hitler would betray him. I don't get it. He's betrayed everyone. I don't know why you would trust him, but he did. Now we got a big problem. What are all the... let me say it like this. I did this in the other class. Where are all of Stalin's best generals? They're in the ground. He purged all of them. Stalin has big problems. The biggest invasion in the history of mankind has come to his doorstep. And now they're advancing at such a pace that even Hitler's surprised. Even he says, I didn't think we could go this fast. I thought the Russians would stand up better than this. I don't even know what they're doing. Why are they letting us run so deep into the Soviet Union? Now I will tell you. One of two things is true here. Actually, I'll tell you what, maybe both are true. One, the Russians couldn't stop them. They didn't have an answer for the blitzkrieg. They don't have what it takes. But two, this is what the Russians always do. Fall back. Buy time. Welcome the enemy in deeper and deeper. Trade space for time. Because soon enough, the Russian secret weapon is on the way. The Russian winter is coming. Now, this is where we're in kind of a strange spot because Hitler has so much success that now he has a choice to make. When Hitler sends in the Blitz to the Soviet Union, like I said, he was going faster than even he anticipated. He's going so fast, he says, we're going to be in Moscow before the summer's over. This is way ahead of our timetable. So Hitler starts thinking about, I'm going to take Moscow. It's going to happen. Now I want my cherry on top. I want my prize. I want to go after the city of Stalingrad. The city that Stalin named after himself. Now there's probably a couple of reasons why Hitler is eyeing Stalingrad. One is he wants his prize. He wants to see Stalingrad burn to the ground. He wants to take and capture Stalin, take him back to Berlin in chains, and have him as his own personal prize. Taking his city is just another symbolic gesture. But there's probably another reason why. Stalingrad happens to sit in the Caucasus Mountains Valley. Stalingrad is the center of an enormous oil reserve right in here. If you have a mechanized army, you better have oil. This would supply the Nazis with all the oil they could ever need. Taking Stalingrad is not a bad idea. But if he's going to do it, he has to deviate from his original plan. He has to change things up. He has to tweak a little bit. Now, we've seen what happens when Hitler has to tweak things a bit. How does it go? Doesn't go well. What Hitler says is, we have plenty of time. let's split our forces. We will send Army Group North all the way up to Finland as they were supposed to do. But we're going to change things. Army Group Center, you're going to continue going on to Moscow. That's your target. He siphons off thousands of troops and tanks and planes and creates a new army group. He says, Army Group South, you go on to Stalingrad. I want my prize. Now, we're going to talk about what happens in Stalingrad a little bit later, because in Stalingrad, there is human suffering on a level it's hard to imagine. We're going to talk about, for the rest of the time we have, what happens to Army Group Center, because they're not spared from what happens in Stalingrad either. Army Group Center is moving on Moscow. They're rolling in the tanks at 50 miles an hour, covering more ground than they ever thought they could. They get within 20 miles of Moscow when the Russian secret weapon sets in. Winter comes. Now, I will tell you, because I bet you could probably think of it too. Can you think of like the coldest you've ever been in your life? I know I can. I remember. I was 18 years old. I still remember this. I was wet and it was freezing out. But it was freezing and it was about 10 degrees. That's not Russian winter cold. The Russian winter sets in and they face 100 degrees below zero. It's colder in Moscow than it is on the moon. What we're going to see is the German army freezes as well. Now, it's not just the soldiers that have problems with this. They've got big issues because they're moving so fast. A lot of these soldiers are still in their summer uniforms. They're literally in shorts when 100 degrees below zero hits them. It's not just the human toll of this, though. When you get to 100 below zero, the oil in tanks and airplanes starts to freeze. They're stuck. The saying is, the hand of Germany froze before it could squeeze. Now, we're going to talk more about what happens with Army Group South a little bit later on. They suffer horrifically, but we'll talk about that later. With that said, have a good day. I will see you guys tomorrow. Certainly. Have a good day, guys.